Super excited today to welcome some friends from Zenika, Singapore. Zenika is a French software consultancy that is a multinational software consultancy, really established, consults with some of the top companies internationally. Zenika Singapore particularly is a growing team with friends from France like Thomas and friends from Singapore like Kevin, and they're looking to expand their team, and so they're here with us today to share more about what they do, as well as help clarify their own personal journeys becoming software engineers and consultants. So we have two speakers, Thomas and Kevin. Thomas is a consultant at Zenika. He's from France. He was a software engineer at French companies in France, Wisby and Sopra Steria before that, and he studied computer science at University de Rennes. I totally pronounced it wrong, in France. Kevin is also a consultant at Zenika. Kevin was most recently, before Zenika, a software engineer at Crédit Agricole, which is a bank based in Singapore. Kevin is a career switcher, like many of us. He did General Assembly Software Engineering Bootcamp back in 2019, and he also taught there as a teaching assistant for a few of their batches. And before switching careers, Kevin was a cabin crew at Scoot. So I'm sure he's going to have a lot of stories to share about that. And I think, he was even a teaching assistant for some of Rocket Academy section leaders and a co-TA with some of them as well. And Kevin studied communications at MDIS in Singapore. Cool. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Thomas, who's going to introduce Zenika, and then Thomas and Kevin will share their thoughts before we open for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to head over to my slide and just nod if you see my slide correctly. Yeah, okay, great.
Yes.
So thank you for joining in. Today, I'm going to present you Zenika, which is a software consultancy company. And I'm also going to talk to you about the difference between what it is to be a software engineer and what it takes to become a software consultant. So first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Thomas. I'm a software engineer that has recently gone the dark path of going a consultant. I'm specialized in front-end development. So I love to give advice and recommendation on performance and accessibility. I work for big IT industry in France, as well as startups, before joining Zenika 2 years ago. And I actually moved in Singapore 3 months ago to join the Singapore office. And now, Kevin, if you want to give a few words about yourself.
Yeah, I'll leave my introduction to
okay.
Because
okay.
No story about me.
Okay, wants to stay mysterious. Okay. So first, who are we at Zenika? So Zenika has been founded in 2006 by a group of people that were passionate about Java. They were tired of the current state of the industry, and they wanted to build something with based on expertise in Java. Now the company has grown a lot. We are more than 500 employees, over 13 agencies, so 10 in France and 3 internationally, in Montreal for the North America, Casablanca for Northern Africa, and Singapore for Southeast Asia. Thankfully, we are not only expert in Java anymore. We have a lot of area of expertise. So it can be agility, project management, big data development, but also security and green IT as well. And we have a few areas of expertise in training as well. So we give training. We also have the Zenika Academy in France that help people switch career as well. And we also provide Zenbox to help people with technological watch and stuff like that. Zenika provide a broad range of services. So we provide some consulting, which is guiding companies, giving our expertise. But we also have sometimes more typical development project where we come in and help companies to build the project they want. We also have the lab, which is a way for companies to actually give us like some requirement because they want to assess a new technology, or maybe they want to create a POC. And this way we can help them build it for them. We also provide training to help company train their employee on newest technology and things like that. And we also can do some typical project, like a client want to build something from scratch, but doesn't have the resource to do so. He can actually give us the requirement and we will create a full team for him with only Zenika employee. So we will build a project with strong base, strong foundation. So they can actually then take over the project and build on strong foundations. We have a lot of partners, which are big leaders in the industry, like Google Cloud or Confluent and Elastic. But as consultant, we still need to remain neutral when assessing technologies and giving advice for clients, because we don't want to sell a product. We actually want to produce advice on what is the best technology suited for our clients. So now I've talked about Zenika and the company, but what is our actual job? What does it take to be a consultant? And what is the difference between a software developer and a consultant? So first, we're gonna look at what it is to be a developer, actually. As a developer, we are expected to know how to write code because that's what we are paid for. We are expected to know how to test your code because you don't want to just write code, ship it, and that's it, not my problem anymore. That's not how you want to do it. You actually need to read code because you're not only writing code from scratch. Sometimes you have to maintain existing code, so you need to read it and understand it. You need to explain what you code to someone else. Let's say you've done some work in the past, someone needs help fixing a bug. You need to explain to him what you've done in the past. And you also need to learn more codes. And by that, I mean, you will always be on the lookout for new technological trends, maybe new frameworks, new patterns that you will try to apply. And the learnings goes on forever, basically. And this was me a few years ago. I wanted to do all of this. And in the end, I ended up being a bit disappointed because when you start working as a developer, you can feel a bit overwhelmed by everything that's going on because the field is like so broad. There is so much to learn as a beginner. And this is what I felt like after a few years. So you don't need to know how to code, but you need to know how to write code in between meetings because you're sometimes drowning in meetings, trying to understand business needs, business requirements for different topics. And so sometimes this is a bit hard as a beginner. Sometimes you're under a lot of stress, like maybe the release of a product is imminent and you don't have as much time as you would to write your code. So you will maybe from time to time ditch the testing, leave it aside and think I'll do it later. And most of the time you actually won't, but that's another problem. You also need to learn how to read not only code, but legacy code. Sometimes code that has been written for more than a few years and nobody actually is still in the company to explain it to you. And that will make you think, oh, I probably need to rewrite this from scratch. Let's erase it completely. Sometimes you have to explain why your estimates were wrong because maybe you have a technical limitation and you keep trying to apologize to other because you feel like you're not maybe good enough. And maybe you feel tired to learn so many new frameworks and shiny stuff you see on the internet, because anyway, the project is like stuck on an old version of Java and you cannot migrate. So this was me a few years ago. And then I decided to take a step back and like change my perspective, because all of this is just deception from what the job actually is. We need to write code, but we are not writing code just for the pleasure of writing code. We are writing code because we need to translate business needs into code. That's why there is so many meetings, because we need to, as software engineer, we need to understand the business, understand what the user are expecting, and then we can translate those business needs into code. We also need to make testing part of our day-to-day routine, because testing is what will actually help you build quality products that will help you to that will help you to avoid regression in the future. And you can also you can build your documentation with tests as well. You will learn to provide feedbacks to others, like when you're doing code review, you will be able to spot mistakes from others, help them fixing them. But sometimes you will have a more senior person that will be writing codes, and just by reading his code, you will be learning from them. And then you'll share knowledge with your colleagues, doing maybe meetings about how to like create this new architecture, about maybe Kafka topics and stuff like that. Sharing knowledge is important because it will help you grow, and it will also help spreading like the technical knowledge among your team. And then I will say one of the hardest parts is to prioritize what you need to learn. So maybe learning Kotlin, a new language for the JVM, is not that important right now for your project. But maybe learning how to migrate to a more recent version of the JVM will actually be benefits for the project you're actually working on. So you need to assess what will actually help me right now, or tomorrow, or 1 month from now. And this is the hardest part, sorting and avoiding all this shiny new subject for what you actually will need. And then once I was a bit more clear on what it takes to be a developer, I decided to transition to a consultant role, because I wanted to actually give advice, and I didn't want to just build stuff, be part of a project team. I wanted to help teams to grow, to build better products, to improve the quality of software in general. And that's why I became a consultant. But what is a consultant? So I found this definition to be kind of spot on. A software consultant is an IT professional hired to give advice on strategy, design, building, and sometimes implementation of software that solves business problems. And in this definition, nowhere is it written that you actually write code. So as consultant, we are giving advice to our client on how he should try to build something. We will probably help him doing the blueprints of the architecture. And if the clients make a bad decision when implementing the recommendation we gave him, that's maybe his fault, because we are not here to build the product with him. He can hire you. He can hire you to build the product with him, but the main role of a consultant is mostly giving advice and training and guidance to other companies. We are not here to build the product, even though we can, in the end, be part of the team to implement what we advise for.
Mhm.
But this is not the main role of a consultant. So as consultant, we are expected to have a decent amount of expertise because that's what the client paid for in the end. And we are also expected to have a lot of experience in our domain, so we can back up our recommendation. Like in the past, I worked for this client and we did this because of this reason, and this worked really well in the end. So experience is, I would say, a plus when giving recommendation. We need to have a lot of collaboration as consultant because we are not expected to write code in one of the corner of the room. We are expected to like talk to the project manager, to the platform team, understand what the system actually is like today. So we can give good advice on what the system should look like maybe a few years from now. And that's why we need analytical skills as well, because we'll be looking everywhere, trying to find all the existing stuff in the system, so we can assess properly what is the current situation. And then last but not least, the teaching skill, because once we've made some recommendation, once we are helping people building what we advise for, we need to also help the team grow, and we need to help them reach a certain level of skill and confidence so they can build it on their own once we are gone. And what do we do as consultants? So most of the time, we're still on mission at one client, and we're still doing development. But from time to time, we'll be taking multiple clients, multiple assignments. Sometimes you'll be like doing an audit of an application to see if it's maybe performant enough, and that will be maybe 1 or 1.5 a day every 2 weeks over a few months. And the rest of the time you will be working at your main client doing development. So for instance, back in France, I used to give training to company. So part of your week, you will be at your main client. And then one morning you will be giving a conference to another company, helping them know about this new piece of technology and why they should adopt it. And then maybe 2 days later, you will be giving training to yet another company. So
what was that? Another company, you said?
Yeah. So we do give training as well. Sometimes as consultant, since we are experts in our domain, we try to look for speaking opportunity as well. So it can be in meetups or in more important conference. Like I'm a software engineer specialized in front end. I write mostly TypeScript and JavaScript. So conference like JSConf are like huge spots where we definitely want to give talks and express our knowledge about something and share our passion about this or that. Some of us are also meetup or conference organizers. Some of us are involved in open source or just side project that takes a lot of time. And most of the time we just try to keep learning because there is always so much to learn.
Nice.
And that's it for the part where I talk about software consultancy.
Awesome.
Maybe I can just you can just take the floor, Kevin, if you want.
Yeah, that was really eye-opening. I think Kevin is going to share some about his experience as well. So we'll hand it over to Kevin first.
Okay. Yeah. So mine is a little bit different. I'm not gonna. Sorry, give me a while to change the screen. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm gonna use a Notion page instead of a slideshow to just run through a little bit about myself.
Mm.
So like what Kai has mentioned before, I was a software engineer. I was actually working as a cabin crew in Scoot. So for a good 6 years, I was there, starting from September 2013 all the way up to September 2000, sorry, 2019. Sorry, I gotta check. So, so that was a good 6 years. In that 6 years, I actually experienced a lot of things, being a frontline staff and in the service industry. Um, it was an eye-opening experience for me. I would say that compared to now, it's totally different in the entire nature of work. You deal with a lot more unknowns because you deal with a lot of people rather than something that's grounded in logic like computer like software engineering, right? Yeah. So after that, I went to GA, which is a bootcamp similar to Rocket Academy. And that was, I decided to do it full time because when I was flying, it's a very difficult to manage schedule. So you can be in one country today, you can be in another country another day. Your flights could be in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, or like throughout the night, right? So it was very difficult to juggle that and learning. So I decided to quit my job totally to join like a full-time bootcamp.
Yeah.
After that, I was lucky enough to actually stay for one more batch to be the teaching assistant for the next batch. I think some of you might know some of the TAs, Rob and Sam. They are from SEI 21. Yeah. And then I joined some startup. This was a very quick amount of, this was a very short time because unfortunately it was during COVID and that company was hit by COVID.
Yeah.
And so layoffs started, starting from the most junior, right? From the ones that just joined the company. So actually, Minshan would know because I was in the same company as Minshan just for like a month or so, a month plus. Yeah. But fortunately, I managed to find another job at Crédit Agricole, which is a French bank.
Yeah.
This was thanks to my mentor at the startup that I mentioned earlier. Yeah. So during that time as well, because I was going through retrenchment, I was trying to find something to do to sharpen my skills as a software developer. So I volunteered myself for this thing called Help with COVID, which is like a global initiative where people wanted to just do something to help, with whatever that's going on because everyone was so confused with COVID. And so I joined this platform I joined this group that helped to build a platform for bootcamp graduates to find jobs. So that spent about a year or so, maybe slightly less than that.
What was it called?
It's called Boot Career. I'm not sure if it's still functional.
Korea. It's Singapore based?
It was US based and because Help with COVID is a platform that is like global. So it was US based. We all work remotely because there are people from all over like Kenya, like Europe countries as well. So it was a superb team of international people. And the founder was Malaysian, so he was Malaysian, but he's based in US. Yeah,
okay.
It's kind of cool. That it was a very good exposure for me to learn like how people from US side worked on things.
Yeah.
With a big team and everything. Yeah. So during that time, I was also working at Crédit Agricole, right? This was based in Singapore. So it's a French bank, but their IT hub is based in Singapore. So I was working there as a software engineer, but in a very different domain from what I was trained. So like most boot camps, you would find that you are trained in web development, mainly JavaScript or some Python or Ruby on Rails. This one was on Java, and it was a lot of data. I would call it data manipulation and data packing, basically. So we will basically take all the information that's coming from all the branches from the bank and consolidate them and run them through a lot of code, different algorithms to properly package those data such that it becomes like manageable for the analysts to work through that. Yeah, so this is completely different because there's no UI, there's no nothing. It's just from data warehouse to data warehouse, and then in between you run through some logic. Yeah. Yeah, so during the time I was also helping out with this part-time GA course as well, SEIF degree, which I then get to experience what it's like to be a full-time GA student and a part-time bootcamp student. Yeah. And then after a year at Crédit Agricole, I decided to join Zenika. And in Zenika, right, I actually went through 2 different clients. So I think that was one of the most interesting parts about being a consultant. You're not exactly tied to one particular company. So you get to jump around and experience different things. So the first one was actually a startup. They use a largely different stack from what I was used to at Crédit Agricole. Once again, it was very new. It was like AWS stack with React and Express backend, which is something that you guys would be familiar with. Yeah. And then a few months on, I was also assigned to another client called GIC that you may be familiar with. So it's back to the finance sector for me and doing things that are slightly more familiar work. Yeah, so that pretty much sums up my adventure to now. Yeah. So it's been 2-3 years since. Yeah. So a little bit more about what, as a career changer, what are the additional things that I did to help transit from the frontline role that I was doing, right? So when I was still flying, so there were things like Code Academy, things like Free Code Camp, that I actually went on to try out a little bit of coding first to see if I actually like it or not before committing to like quitting my job and jumping into this full time. And that was when things were very radiant and peaceful. There was no COVID yet. September 2019 was like the time where everyone was like saying, "Oh, aviation is doing so well. We are opening so many new routes to so many new countries. Why don't you stay for a while longer?" And I was like, "Yeah, maybe I want to change careers. I just want to do something else, right?" And then they're like, "Oh, are you sure you don't want to stay longer?" And then 3 months later or 6 months later, when COVID hit, they were like, "Oh my God, how do you know? How do you know that, everything, all the flights are going to be grounded?" And yeah, and I was like, "No, I don't know anything. It was just like gut feel, Yeah. So I have no foresight. It was just like, I really just felt like leaving already.
Nobody asked whether you consulted a feng shui master beforehand.
No, there was no feng shui master. There was no signs from up there. It was just like, okay. In fact, it was already bubbling in me that I wanted to go after so long. Yeah. yeah, so during that time, when I was flying, when I was overseas, there are certain places, countries that I've went too many times. So that was when I was like, okay, bring my laptop and do some coding practice on free code camp or academy, and then try out some stuff. Yeah. Then when I was still a student, studying in GA, there were a lot of news articles that I subscribed to, but didn't make sense to me because they were too technical. Nonetheless, I ran through to see if there's anything that was more bite-sized. I would just pick out those articles and just read through, and yeah, it was a lot of exploring and exposing yourself to different things. Yeah, and then once you graduate, then it's like, okay, do some algorithm questions, lead code or hacker rank to practice your speed at which you code, so that during interviews you are able to perform faster. Yeah, and more familiar with the different tools that the language in the language has, like for example your JavaScript advanced functions. Yeah.
Yep.
And also, yeah, during that time I also went to a lot of events. Unfortunately it stopped after a while because everyone was in lockdown.
Yep.
But there were a lot of meetups. Junior Dev SG was actually a very important organization because they had a lot of meetups during that time that involved a lot of this bootcamp graduates or bootcamp students. Yeah. And there were also, like, for example, Java user group SG, or like JavaScript user group, React user group. So all these different user groups, they host events every now and then, offering free drinks and free pizza. So it's a very curious thing to me. Like, what do you mean they are teaching me stuff and they are offering me food? It's just, yeah, amazing. So this is the kind of thing that you don't really see in other industries, I feel. Back when I came from, even before this, it was like advertising and media industry. There was no such thing as like, oh, come, we'll teach you some stuff and then we'll give you free food. Or like aviation, no way. Everything and anything is chargeable. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, I'm thankful for being in this industry. Thomas was mentioning as well, CTJS. We actually went recently together to CTJS, and it was a nice experience. I learned a lot of stuff that was very different as well, even though with 2 years in the industry, I feel like I only know like a branch in like a tree of knowledge, Yeah.
What is CTJS?
CTJS is how do I
It's initially a meetup that was taking place in London, and actually decided to do some event overseas. So they did one in Singapore, they did one in Greece, and they did one recently in Nigeria, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's similar to, there's another one, JS Con.
Okay.
Yeah. JS Con.
Like JS Con, but rotating cities.
Yeah. Something similar.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. And what else? So continued development. So I was also doing like a small project with my friends, watching tutorials when I was commuting to work and whatnot. And also all the projects that I did during the bootcamp, sometimes I'll just tear them apart, review them with the new knowledge that I've acquired, with the new practices, or like the new what do you call it? Style of coding. Yeah. Some advice to move for you guys who are also mid-career switchers. Embrace your past experiences. Don't just throw everything out of the window and tell yourself that, okay, I'm starting afresh. but actually what you've done in the past is important for you as well. So, for example, I was a cabin crew in the past, so I dealt with a lot of people, and this kind of people skills is important when you're in an office environment and you need to work with teammates. So yeah, it doesn't mean that okay, it's a completely different domain and then I've got to just start afresh and everything. You are not actually starting afresh. You're just building on yourself a new set of skills. Yeah. Learning never stops. Even now, I'm still watching a lot of tutorials. I'm still learning a lot of things. Reading a lot of documentation now compared to the past, because the past is like, okay, just find answers on Stack Overflow. But now, as you get to experience more difficult questions that nobody else has encountered before, you need to really start reading documentation in depth to see what is going wrong, what is going on, and how do you fix it.
Yeah.
And never give up. So remember why you started, and keep reminding yourself what is your end goal, what do you want, and tell yourself that you've went through so much difficulties in the past. Just keep reminding yourself of why do you want to be here. Cool. And these are my socials, and that's all for my presentation. Yeah.
Awesome. Will you guys be able to share these slides and this Notion with us later that we can share with our
sure.
community as well?
Yeah, sure. I'll
Awesome.
do a PDF version or something like that.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much, guys. I mean, that was amazing advice as well, and it's great to learn about Zenika and the different, the journey from being a software engineer to being a consultant and day in the life of a consultant as well. I think since there's a relatively small group here, we don't have to use the pigeonhole. So I think if anyone has questions, we can also just shoot. But I will start off with a few questions of my own, since I had some questions from your presentations as well. So yeah, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, maybe in a few areas, 2 areas. One is Zenika's work itself. So I think Thomas mentioned a bit about how 1 or 2 days a week, for example, there might be some training. So as a consultant, you go to different companies and you do training for their employees. And then the rest of the time, you might be doing development on a particular project or one or more projects that you've been assigned to. And I know that Thomas mentioned there were 5 different types of products that Zenika offers initially, right? There's consulting is one of them, but there's also
development or lab or training, and the last one, project.
Yeah. So could you go into a bit more detail? Right, like how does a consultant balance between these different products that Zenika offers?
Okay, so the first, let's say, main difference will be between the development, lab, and project, because all those tasks are basically coding. So usually you won't have the 3 of them in parallel. You'll mainly have one development task or one project, or you'll be assigned to one lab, and that's it. And then you may have some other tasks like training or consultancy that will come on top of your existing clients or existing project. And these tasks are not mandatory. If you don't want to do consultancy and you only want to stay a developer and only have one client, you don't have to take multiple clients. This is one of the good thing at Zenika. We have the liberty to choose our mission. We can choose our clients. If one mission doesn't appeal to us, we can just say, this, I don't want to do it, and let's find another client. I want to work on this particular domain. Let's find something that maybe does development in React or things like that. So we have the chance in the industry we are lucky to have many opportunities. So
Yeah.
Luckily we can choose what we want to work on.
Yeah.
And some of us are trainers by nature. They are more experienced at teaching. They love to do it. So they will be keen on taking training assignments. And some of us are not. Some of us don't really like teaching or are not really comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So it's the same. You don't have to take those tasks if you don't want to.
Yeah.
But if you like to teach other people, or if you like the format of teaching over a few days to a very small group of people, you can do it easily.
What kind of teaching would it be? It's like a specific terminology for experienced engineers?
Yeah,
or is it
can be very technologically. Sorry, I can do it. It can be on a very particular technical domain subject. So we have formation, we have training, about Angular. So you can have the beginners course for Angular, but you can also have the expert course about Angular. So you can know more about the inner workings.
Yeah.
You can have trainings in Kubernetes, foundation on Docker. So it can be typical development, more DevOps task, but we also have trainings on agility. So we have course on how to be a Scrum Master and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the topics are very broad, I would say, and not only technical.
Got it. So it's for engineers at the other companies, essentially.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And in terms of the coding projects that you guys work on, I think Kevin mentioned a few. He mentioned there was a startup where there was some kind of AWS React Express app that he built, and then also the data engineering work that he also did at the bank. Are those, would you say those are typical projects that consultants would work on? So like, say a consultant joins a company and then works with engineers at that company to develop a product or develop a data pipeline? Or are there other what are the usual examples of projects that consultants work on when they're with clients?
I would say it can vary a lot to be depending on your clients. Let's say I had some previous clients back in France. All the projects were using Angular in one of my clients. So every task I would be assigned at this client would be working mostly on Angular.
Yeah.
And some of my colleague in another client would be working on React, because that would be the tech stack for another client. So it would vary a lot depending on this. And yes, sorry about the technical terms I keep using. And thank you for explaining.
In case anyone did.
Yeah.
Cool. So you're saying in France, some of the projects are very front-end focused, but then there's some
sometimes the clients only need expertise in backend or in data or setting up pipelines for the continuous delivery. So the expertise will depend on what the clients needs.
And how much choice do consultants have on which projects that they want to pick up?
I would say it varies also depending on which office you are in, because for instance, the office in the northern part of France, in Lille, I think there is a lot of, how do you say, retail company. So if you don't like to work in retail, you'll be probably disappointed. But yeah, it depends on where you are located. Same in Singapore. There is a lot of fintech companies in Singapore. So if you really hate fintechs, well, I think you're in bad luck here. And depending on the timing as well. So let's say you arrived right at the start of COVID. All the clients were like trying to lower the cost and were stopping hiring new consultants.
Yeah.
So finding a decent mission at that time was maybe more difficult.
Yeah.
But I joined Zenika right at the start of COVID, and I still managed to find the exact mission I would love to work on. So I was pretty happy to have this opportunity at the time.
Awesome. Awesome. And Kevin, you were saying that before you joined Zenika, or even during your time at Zenika, you were volunteering at that nonprofit to help bootcamp grads find opportunities. Could you tell me more about that work? Right? How are you helping them get jobs? And yeah, how would you recommend the bootcamp students here go about that process?
So with regards to the platform itself, it's actually some sort of matching platform whereby the user would be able to upload their resume. It's something similar to LinkedIn, but in a sense that instead of um, instead of reaching out to, or rather, instead of reaching out to companies, it would be more like companies would browse through all these profiles and portfolios and try to select like a bunch of them to come in for interview.
Yeah.
And also based on location, of course.
I see. So you're more working on the platform instead of working with individual students?
Yes.
Ah, okay, okay.
So yeah, so we were working on a platform, and I think for students now, there actually is a very big organization in Singapore called Better SG.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Ray worked with them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
Ray volunteered with them.
it's a good place to start, and you get to work on. I would say you get to work on more interesting, closer to home kind of projects, other than if you were to work for like a big company. Because, for example, if you work, especially if you work for finance, you're not gonna be the user for those products actually. For myself, actually, I'm working on something that's more like mid-office support or trader support. So I'm not a trader, so I'm definitely not gonna be using those tools. Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin, can I ask you a little bit about your experience at Crédit Agricole? Just so happened that I think last year I attended an interview there previously. So can't remember whether the role is data analyst or data engineer. So your role there, was it more of a data engineer or software engineer?
It's software engineer, but we deal with a lot of data. I would say that the difference between a software engineer and a data engineer is that end of it all, we are still concerned about tech stack, how you fetch data from the database, and how you connect the different APIs together, rather than the exact calculations that are going on to manipulate the data in a way that the analyst can consume it. We work with a lot of data teams as well. So
it's a lot of heavy lifting of the data, from what I'm hearing. Data engineering, data munging, this kind of stuff. Or more than that?
No, I would say that it's less.
Less than that.
Yeah, it's less than that. It's not a lot of calculation and statistics, but more of like trying to put the things in their proper places.
Okay, quite a bit of talking to different user departments, those kind of stuff also.
I wouldn't say that I'm the one who talks to the different arms. It was more the project manager who talks to them and then says that, okay, you guys need to do this, so it's blah blah blah. Because it's because the thing with banks and financial institutions is that a lot of them work on a waterfall kind of setup rather than an agile kind of setup. So
Or not yet agile.
there's not much chance for developers to actually tell them that, hey, this doesn't work. Maybe another approach would be better, because
Mhm.
we wouldn't know what would be the sort of like the end goal either, because it is very domain intensive in a sense that it's a lot of financial things. I mean, before I went in, I don't even know what like things like counterparty or like
Yeah.
credit
No, I
risk.
hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But-
very domain specific. Yes, that's
Yeoman used to
true.
work in finance, so he has a lot of this expertise as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes and no lah. I work in the front office side, so sometimes when they ask about very technical things about trade support, uh, trade settlement, the middle office and the operation part, I also have some gaps in my understanding.
Yeah.
My understanding is probably more complete in the market making side, because I used to be a fund manager. I used to trade stocks, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
the front office part probably more familiar. But at the supporting side, all the systems, I understand they do a lot of Java. Yeah, those kind of stuff. I probably also not really up to speed.
No, I totally think that you will do fine if you join like a
Yeah.
finance tech kind of company.
Yeah. One last question, Kevin. Because you were there for a while, I guess also about 1 year or 2 years. So did you find that the bank is a bit more corporate, like bureaucratic kind of a structure? Because I've never worked in a startup yet. So far, my entire career I've worked for big companies. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely lah. Because
you think so, right?
there are a lot of things like with a startup. There's more margin of error. That being said, if something do go wrong, chances are nobody gets injured. But in like an MNC or like a bank, if something messes up, I think the damage is quite massive, especially with banks. Yeah. Now I'm dealing with the presentation of numbers, so that alone is like, okay, it's pretty stressful.
Okay, I guess it depends on the magnitude of the error as well, the magnitude of the error and who are the users of that particular application. So is it mission critical, like for trading, or is it more just for
Yeah, I mean, if it's like a credit card sign up page, then probably not as yeah, they're probably not gonna go through like 9 rounds of testing and approvals before they say that, okay, sure, your button can be blue instead of red. So it's a bit safer on that side. But with regards to trading, every single step has to be monitored, approved, and every single arm is very isolated in the sense that even though we write the code, we can't deploy it. We have to send to another department to deploy it.
Wow. Yeah. Ray or Eric, did you guys have any questions for Thomas or Kevin? Minshan?
That is Eric. I do have a question for like Kevin. I wanted to ask more of a question about like after bootcamp and transiting to a full-time job, right? What was like, was it as what you expected? And what was like the biggest surprise you surprised to you? It can either be positive or negative. So like, how was this transition like? And
so it was much more the transition was much more smooth than I expected, probably because I spent a lot of time about 6 months in a boot camp, 3 months studying and 3 months being a TA, right? So I've gotten used to like being seated down in front of my desk. Because before that, at the first 2 months, I was like, oh man, I need to walk around. I cannot, I just can't be seated for a long time. Because my previous job was like, okay, keep walking around. Even for example, it's an 8-hour flight. It's like there's no chance to sit. If it's busy, you're just walking around the whole 8 hours.
Wow.
And then to now it's like, okay, if I'm busy, I don't get to stand up. So it's like, okay, that's the major difference. In a bad way, I think I had my first stroke of like backache, like at a half year mark, 6 months in, and I was like, okay, I had a quite a severe backache, and I went to the TCM, and doctor said that you gotta stand up more and walk around more because your back is not acclimatized to that much sitting down and stuff like that. I was really surprised. I thought I was young, but I guess not.
Wow.
Yeah. But on the other hand, my sinus is gone. So because of the regular sleep cycle, and you sleep at night, you wake up in the day, which is it's really it's really a privilege for a cabin crew, because sometimes you gotta wake up like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and go to work. So you sleep in the day when the sun is up and your neighbors are noisy, and you get very bad.
Very tough life. Very tough life.
Yeah, it was a very tough life.
It is. Yeah, no, Kevin, you raised a very interesting point about the backache part, because I happen to have a lady friend who is an air stewardess, and she just left her role, not as long as you. I think you are really impressive, 6 years. I think she probably only 2 or 3 years. And she told me that quite the opposite. She says walking too much on the flight, right? Somehow the posture, it affects the posture. So I don't know whether is it because she wasn't walking the proper way or
No, I'm pretty sure I'm not sitting the proper way. That's why I got my backache. But yeah, different people is just built differently.
No, you say the backache is due to the sitting down too much as a software engineer, right? Not due to the. She said was from the doing a cabin crew long term.
Yeah, I do have colleagues who are always complaining about backache and stuff.
Hey guys, I just want to be mindful of time. I know that we're up on the hour, and we are going to share Thomas and Kevin's contact information afterward for those who want to keep in touch with further questions. Before we go, I do want to ask a final question to Thomas and Kevin. Where can we learn more about the roles at Zenika, and how can we best prepare for interview opportunities at Zenika if we choose to apply?
Thomas?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about Zenika, you can head over to zenika.com. We have a website that should be in English if you come from Singapore. And we have all other offers that are listed there. So if you want to see what are the positions and what are the requirements, you can head over to zenika.com to see that. And if you want to prepare best for our interview, I would say just be yourself and be confident in what you know.
Any particular, should we prepare more on algorithms, or should it be more of preparing for small projects like take home? Is there anything in particular that we should look out for?
It depends on who's the interviewer, but since we're a consultancy company, we are mostly looking at the expertise on particular subject. So if you're applying for a front-end role, I would probably be asking a lot of questions about your favorite framework and your knowledge of the browser and how the web works and things like that.
Alrighty. Well, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Thomas and Kevin and Carol, for being here with us.